The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Everyone, welcome to Artist Corner. My guest today, very happy to welcome Jackie Williams to Artist Corner. Jackie is a member of the Greater Fall River Art Association. She is a member of the board of directors of the Greater Fall River Art Association, but most importantly, she is a phenomenal artist who teaches adult watercolor and drawing at the Art Association, as well as a brand spanking new offering for teenagers who are starting out their journey in watercolors. So welcome, my friend. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Nice to welcome you here. So I know that you've been a member of the Art Association for a while.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your artistic journey. How did you start? Have you always been interested in art, little kid, or how did that get? How did you get there?
It was in the 6th grade. My 6th grade teacher took us to the BMFA.
Oh yeah.
And it was the first time in a museum. And the first painting I remember seeing was the huge Mondrian.
Oh yes.
And I just fell in love with it.
Wonderful.
And I looked at it and I said, I could do that.
Awesome. and look what you're doing.
Yeah.
So did you was art in your high school days too? Did you
I
do art?
I took art in high school. In elementary school, we did not have an art teacher.
Oh.
Most of the time we didn't. But then in high school, I did. I took as many art classes. Thank God Durfee had a lot of offerings. They had art portfolio, they had ceramics class, photography, they had a lot of stuff. So I was in my glory.
Absolutely.
Especially senior year. I just basically stood in the art department.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
And then I went to college and I majored in illustration.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how did you get to watercolor? How did that evolve?
Watercolor, well, I majored in illustration, so we were primarily using pen and ink.
Okay.
Most of the time. We could use color, we used gouache and watercolor, but we had no instruction on how to use those materials.
Oh my goodness.
You know, we didn't. But we had, a lot of theory and all that. And then when I left college, I mean, there were no jobs around here. So I went into dentistry, of all things. And once my son was in college,
Yep.
I stopped that, and I went full-time into art.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I started with watercolor just because it was clean and neat, and I love it.
Do you do other mediums? I know that you're doing drawing for the association. Do you do oils and acrylics, pastels, those kinds of things?
I do. I dabbled in everything. I started in watercolor, but then I was tired of cutting mats and framing them under glass and all that, so I switched to acrylics,
Okay.
and which I loved, and that first one is acrylic. The problem is you just get that stuff all over the place, and once you get it on your clothes and your carpeting, you can't get it off. So I slowly went back into watercolor,
Okay.
which is just my favorite medium. I also did oils. I still do oils. As a matter of fact, I'm doing oils right now while I can still have the windows open.
Right. Right.
But once it gets cold, then
Hard to
that's
do
it.
with the turpentine
Yeah.
and the mineral spirits, whatever you use. It's really, it's tough.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So tell me about the kind of subjects that you use. I know I've seen just about everything that you have done in some of the artwork that you've had at the gallery, at the association. What kinds of things like really make you happy?
I'm really eclectic.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I'm all over the place. And I really don't want to get bogged down to one subject matter
Okay.
or one style, because I'm just not that kind of person. I'm all over the place, and I enjoy researching a lot of different things. So, and that brings me to different things that I want to paint. But mostly I like to paint food for whatever reason.
Right in my head.
Pastries and all that. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this lovely piece, because this is like my mixer, all happy and joyful.
yeah, that's all things from my kitchen, and it's called Ode to Julia Child,
I love it.
because I loved watching her when I was growing up, and I started cooking because of her. So those are all the things in my kitchen that I bought pretty much because Julia Child liked the KitchenAid. I had to have one.
Oh, absolutely.
And of course, that's her cookbook right there.
I love it.
My blue apron that I wear all the time, the salt and pepper shakers, and of course the glass of
You
wine.
have to have a glass of wine.
You have to.
You can't cook without a glass of
Yes.
wine, I'm finding
And
out.
then the impeccably clean towel that she always mentioned is
Absolutely.
in there. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And I did it in a
too.
circle because
Yeah.
she's passed, and
Right.
she continues on.
Absolutely. There are still people that know you may not cook, but you know who Julia
Yes,
Child
yeah.
was.
Even the young people do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love this. So this is acrylic?
That's acrylic, yes.
I love it. I
On canvas.
absolutely love it.
Thanks.
Absolutely love that. That looks like my KitchenAid, I will tell you that.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And the wooden things.
The wooden
I
spoons, yeah.
I remember her with the chickens. So we can all giggle about the chickens. But this is phenomenal. I just love it.
Thanks.
Absolutely wonderful. I just love it. Now, I'm going to slide over here and grab this one, because this is this is speaking volumes to me. Kind of has a very old feel to it. Like
Right.
I would find this maybe in Norway or Sweden
Yeah,
or somewhere. So tell me about this. Tell me what this is.
Well, it's old skates, and it's a combination of a few different photographs that I found.
Love it.
And I love the old wood and the patinas on the leather and all that, so I just went to town on it.
Amazing. It's amazing. It almost feels like I could, well, I had those skates, that's
Do
for
you?
sure. Oh, we had those, and the little toe pick in the front. Oh, absolutely. I didn't have these, but I had roller skates kind of like that, where you clip them onto your sneakers. But these
Oh,
would
yes,
probably
yeah.
get clipped onto your shoes. So the inspiration was some photographs.
Yep.
Is this watercolor?
That's watercolor, and it's mounted on board.
Love it.
And I've been using that pretty much exclusively for watercolors. It's not a technique that I discovered by myself, but I found out about it, and then I kind of perfected it on my own. And the reason was because I wanted to stay away from cutting mats and having glass, because I hate the reflections
Right.
from the glass. And even though you can get museum glass, it's very costly.
Very.
And because I sell my work, I would have to, tag that on to the price tag for the consumer.
Exactly.
And it just gets to be too high.
So
So this is a way around it.
So you're actually working on watercolor paper,
Right.
oh, and
Watercolor
then
paper.
and then it's on a
And then I
on a
mount
wooden
it
board.
with acrylic gel medium
Oh, yeah.
onto the board. Yeah,
Nice.
it's an involved process, and you can mess it up, and it's not reversible. That's the thing. Like once it's on there, that's it.
Yeah.
But I can also put a frame around there.
Right.
Yeah. But I
Right.
don't frame too many of my pieces, because I find that people like to pick out frames that fit to their decor.
Right.
So I just leave it unframed.
Right. We've had many artists come in and ask, about framing and why is there so many pieces of artwork that aren't framed? And that's actually what I personally tell people. Look, you can put anything that's not framed into a frame.
Right.
Buy the frame that you want, because I could pick out a very simple frame, and you may want something that's got a whole lot more ornate
Right.
carving around it, and how would we know?
Right.
You know, I love this technique because I always wondered. Thank you for telling me this.
Yeah,
I always
welcome.
wondered how you got, like, how could you not have to go behind glass for watercolors, and how would you be able to do something more? It feels more stable, more bulky.
Yep,
You know.
yep. More substantial.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I love the fact that it's framed. I love the fact that it's on a wooden. I know that they have canvases that you can paint watercolor.
Yeah,
I
I've
was
tried it
gonna
and
ask
I
you.
don't really like it.
Okay.
Because I use a layering technique.
Okay.
And because the canvas is not porous, it only sits on the surface and it doesn't get absorbed in. So if you put another layer on top, there's a chance that it's going to lift.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
so
I've
I
s-
don't work like that. so.
I've seen those, and that was a question I was gonna ask you about, because I know in the classes that I know that you've taught and continue to teach for the association, you're using the watercolor blocks.
Yes.
And I think that's a nice size medium too, especially for beginners. But then I see these watercolor canvases at various different places, and I always wondered how that would work, because it just felt like it's just a regular artist canvas with gesso on it. What would make it watercolor? And I wouldn't know how that would work. I was going to ask you, how would you make that work? I don't have a handle on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a very loose style, you can probably get away with it.
Okay.
You can also use acrylics on that kind of canvas, really watered down to, be like watercolors, but they're more permanent.
Okay.
So, for instance, after this gets put on the board, I have to spray it with an isolation coat
Okay.
that is not water-based, so I don't lift up
your-
any of the colors. Once that's put on, then I put on top a few layers of acrylic medium, and that sets it. So it protects it from surface scratches, and it also provides a UV protectant to it.
Nice.
But like any artwork, without glass, it can get damaged. So you have
Absolutely.
to have care with it.
Absolutely. This is just stunning. This is
Thank you.
just beautiful. Love it, love it, love everything about that. I know that you are doing a lot of teaching for the association.
Yes.
Talk to me about what your process is for teaching, especially now. I'm not a watercolorist by any stretch of the imagination. How do you go about teaching someone like me who doesn't do watercolor?
All right, so the first thing I do is I teach the students like how to do a wash,
Okay.
because that's very important to know how to control the flow of the watercolor
Okay.
on the paper. So I do that. I have them make little swatches of all the colors that are in their kit so they become familiar with it.
Okay.
Because student grade paints are usually don't have the proper names on the paints.
Okay.
Once you get into the professional quality, then they have like alizarin crimson or cerulean blue. So I want them to get familiarized with the colors and what their names are.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I teach them like how to put them together and mix them together to get other colors. So those are the first things that I do. I also go over brush care, which is really important because you have to take care of your materials. Watercolor brushes are expensive.
They're very expensive. I mean, they're very expensive.
And watercolor, the first thing is important is the paper.
Okay.
Then it's the brushes, then it's the paint.
Okay.
So you have to get good quality stuff.
I think so, because I know that there are some places that will sell a lot more inexpensive, especially paper.
Yeah.
And I've noticed one of the challenges, at least for me, is I've seen it sort of separate, and the paper itself just wants to, instead of being nice and together, it separates into 2 or 3 different layers, and I'm
Really?
thinking,
I've
what is
never
going
had
on?
that happen,
Oh,
but
it's awful.
I've had buckling happen.
Right, all the
and
time.
then the watercolor pools in those recesses.
Right.
And then, that's disastrous.
Oh, it's awful. That's awful, because everybody wants to have a nice,
Yeah,
clean.
so paper's number one.
So talk to me about the brushes. I know that I had a very good friend who passed away who loved, like, natural brushes,
Yeah.
like I don't know, squirrel or
Squirrel is good.
they're very
Sable is
expensive.
good
Yep,
too.
very expensive.
Even the good synthetics that are out now are really great. But you have to invest into them, so you have to care for them too. You can't just put a watercolor brush in the water and leave it there,
Right.
because then
It
the
gets that
tip will get curled and you can never get that out.
Right.
And you spend a lot of money, and you don't want that to happen. Also, if you have a lot of water sitting on the ferrule, it will go into the glue that holds the whole thing together, and it'll just fall apart.
Oh,
So
wow.
you have to take care of the.
I think with everything, no matter which medium you're working in, you
Yeah,
have to take care
yeah.
of your materials.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then you can't cry about not having
Exactly.
having your stuff.
And which is worse is the acrylics. You can really ruin brushes with
Oh,
acrylics.
Been there and yes, done that. And it's just because if you leave them sit in the water, or you're lazy sometimes like I am, and you just let it sit there and you come back and it's just, yep, I just
Yep,
lost
hard
that.
hard as a rock.
Absolutely. And I know that a couple people have said, well, there's ways to loosen them up again. And I'm thinking, yeah, but the
They're
bristles
never
are
gonna
so
be
dry.
the same.
No, they're so dry and
Yeah.
yucky, just throw them out.
Yeah.
Or I'll turn them into a piece of artwork.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you can, paint like trees with the
Right.
stiffer brushes, and
Right.
that kind of helps. So don't throw them out. But don't
We
use
can all
them
be Bob Ross with
first.
the happy little
Yes,
trees, right? Tell me about your drawing classes. I know we've been trying to get them more or less off the ground. We at the association obviously give our young students sketchbooks, and we encourage them all the time to draw. And our student teacher is a particularly gifted drawer. He loves to draw. He's an illustrator as well. But tell me about the importance of drawing for you.
Drawing is the foundation.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless you're totally abstract, you need to know how to draw. As a matter of fact, when I have a bunch of new students in for watercolor, everyone wants to paint.
Right.
So I invariably have to teach them some drawing skills
Right.
along with the watercolor, so
Right.
they'll know what to do.
I know. It's funny. I always tell people I don't draw. I'm more hands-on and doing that. But I'm finding myself more trying to do a little bit of at least getting basic shapes on things that I want to try to do, especially if I'm going to work on a flat piece. Or I usually draw in a book where I'm going to try to create a three-dimensional piece. At least I've got some sort of those
Right, an idea.
idea in my head. I try to get it out of the head. So when you would teach drawing, what would we learn? What would our students learn if we were going to teach them drawing? Are we starting with a piece of paper and a number 2 pencil, or are we going somewhere different?
Well, I mean, yes, we would start with a number 2 pencil, but then I'd like to teach them charcoal, which gets a little messy, but it helps them to free up their hand, you know? Because with a pencil, because it's a small point, they tend to like piddle a little bit. You can't do that with charcoal. You've got to draw big and bold.
Right.
So, and then that helps them to loosen up their wrist and their arm. And then I just teach them to, get everything down to the basic shapes and then go from there. And then you have to teach composition and shading and where the light is coming from and all that good stuff.
I love it.
Yeah.
I know one of the things Mr. Ernie keeps telling the little ones, they all want to, I think they're all used to using like crayons and getting the deepest colors and stuff, and when you use charcoals and even some of the different kinds of pencils, start light and work dark, because they're all going after the broadest pieces of charcoal, and then they're always asking, Mr.
Yeah,
Ernie, I
yeah.
can't get my
Yeah,
shading.
you have
Well,
to
it's
start
starting
light. You have to start light. Yeah.
Start light and work your way into it. I want to talk about this lovely piece here, because this is fall in New England in my world.
Yeah, that's why I brought it in. Today's the first day of fall, so
Happy
I thought
fall,
it was
y'all.
appropriate.
And here we are. We're doing fall. So tell me about this. Is this watercolor?
This is watercolor,
Really?
matted and framed. Just because it's an
Wow.
odd size.
Okay.
And I can only get these wood supports in, standard sizes.
Right.
Unless I make them myself, but I'm not going to do that. Because I don't have the tools.
Right.
But anyway, I took a bunch of photos in October in Little Compton, they had this little area set up, like right off of West Main Road, and there was millions of pumpkins, and they had a big old tractor and everything, so I just took a lot of photos. And I actually used that in one of my watercolor classes, and I taught beginners from start to finish,
I love
how to
this.
do it, and it was great.
I love this. This is absolutely New England.
Yeah, typical
right
New
now.
England fall.
Right here. It's beautiful.
And it's a good challenge because it has a lot of texture.
Yes.
Smooth on the pumpkins, the rough on the pumpkins, the grass, the corn stalks, and then you have lettering, which is another challenge. So it incorporates a lot into the lesson, and they learned a great deal from it.
I think this is just amazing. And as someone who loves texture, that's what drew me in here. The grass has so much texture. The corn stalks, they look like they're going to dance off the canvas at me. I just love this. This is absolutely fall in New England. I just think this is just spectacular. So how hard is it to paint numbers and letters on stuff like this?
I find it difficult for myself because I was never good at that. And my handwriting used to be really good, and now it's not. So for that, I will blow up the picture and then print out the lettering and then trace it. Sorry, that's the only way I can do it.
Why not? Why not?
No, it's a tool that you have to use,
Right.
Yeah.
Do you do any sort of mixed media kinds of things? Have you done? I don't know that I've seen any. Have you done mixed media kinds of work where you might use your watercolors and the acrylics, or watercolors and some other things?
I did one piece, and actually it was in last January. Springbowl Gallery in Newport has this big show. It's called Fakes and Forgeries.
Yes.
And I wanted to put a piece in there, and I chose David Hockney.
Oh yes, yes.
And I did a piece with that. I started with a watercolor, then I used gouache, acrylic, whatever I needed to get the piece done.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So tell me the difference between gouache and watercolor. I know people have used those like interchangeably. Is that true?
Yeah,
so
kind of. Gouache is an opaque watercolor.
Okay.
So the watercolors that I use primarily are transparent, so they're very thin. You can see the paper through them.
Okay.
See how on the blue, the white of the paper comes through.
Okay.
The gouache kind of blocks the paper and blocks that light.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's designer gouache. There's also acrylic gouache, which behaves more like acrylics, but I don't use that because it's too close to acrylics.
Oh, and it goes on just the same way?
Yeah, you can water it down, or you can use it full strength.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's great, yeah.
Are you a bigger fan of the pan watercolors, or the tubes, or what's your favorite?
I get the tubes and I put them in a pan. Yeah.
Perfect.
It's cheaper to buy them in the tubes. It's just more economical. And then they sell the little pans with the little plastic pans in there, and you can fill them up, and you can make your own set that way. You can buy them already made, but then they always put black in there, which I don't like using. Most artists don't use black. And then you've got the reds that they decide you're going to get. So it's a good starting point, but I like to make my own set. So I actually use Sennelier paints from France, which is my favorite. Yep. And then I get them in the tubes, and I just squeeze them in the little
tubs. I love it. I absolutely love that, because when you go into various different art stores in the area, if you don't go to Jerry's, or you don't go to some of those kinds of RISD's art store, you see all these different things, and for me as a non watercolor person, I see lots of little pans with lots of little colors, see lots of little tubes. You can buy kits that have all these lovely colors in them, and I'm always thinking, why not mix your own colors? That way you can always have the color that you want. And I agree with you. I use black only when I need to really get something so that I can't see anything behind it. But even one of our other resident artists, Mary Agnes, she won't buy black oil. She mixes her own. And I've watched her mix black paint, and it's the light dances more on that black paint when you mix it.
It's more alive.
Right. Right. It's very the black paints that you buy in everything are very, they're just black paint.
Yeah, they're dead.
Right. Right.
Dead
Exactly.
color.
Exactly. So where do you want to go from here? Are you where does your art, where do you see your art going from
Well,
here?
I'm pretty much hyper realistic. So lately, probably the past year, I've been delving into abstracts, which I never thought I would do.
I love
so it's
it.
a huge surprise for me.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm basically doing it in a sketchbook right now.
Okay.
And then, you know, once I get my confidence up, I'll be able to share it more.
I love it. I love it because I know that one of the things that I adore about your work is that I know what, sounds so silly when I say, I know what it is. You know, I have to look, it forces me to look at what you've got in your artwork. Like I'm sitting here looking, and there's a number, the little price stickers are on the pumpkins, and the depth is in the corn stalk, and on the skates. I'm looking at all of that texture, and it feels like I could just reach out and touch them. I mean, I feel like I could stand right here and pick these pumpkins up off the ground and grab that corn stalk and waltz it home with me. And Julia's looking down at you over here for sure with that. And I'm looking at, that's my mixer. This one looks a lot nicer than mine, but that's my mixer. So abstract, why abstract? Is it because you've never done it, or?
Maybe. I think it's because, I mean, how far can I take this? That's the way I'm looking at it. Like, how much further can I take it?
Okay.
And I don't know, it just appeals to me. And I took this online workshop in the spring, and, you know, just, you know, to try. And I liked it.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then I got books on it, and then, you know, it just goes.
You got to give it a go,
You
right?
gotta try it, yeah.
I just love it.
I don't know if it's gonna stick, but we'll see.
You know, why not try?
Yeah.
Artists are always trying new things. Why not?
Yeah.
I think it's fabulous. I am so happy that you came today. I
Thank
am
you.
so happy that you're teaching at the Art Association. I know that someday I'm going to get to take a class. I will absolutely do that. And I've watched so many of the students, how much they've progressed, and I know that they love to take your classes and grow, and you're such an encouraging teacher to them.
Thanks.
Our teenagers, I know, will absolutely benefit.
I can't
by
wait
this.
to teach the teenagers.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted a class like that when I was younger, and it wasn't around, or I didn't know of it.
Right.
Or my parents didn't know of it either.
Right. So now we're going to get to offer one of the best watercolor teachers in this area to be able to teach some of our younger folks who are very much interested
Yeah.
in exploring different
Yeah.
things of art. So thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate
Thanks for
you
having
very
me.
much.
It was great.
Awesome. Awesome.